CHEK Podcasts.
Hello and welcome to My CHEK. My name is Paul Haysom, and today we have a very special guest on the show. Someone I've been trying to track down for years now. Helen, the historian. Helen Edwards is born and raised here in Victoria. She's an encyclopedia of knowledge when it comes to the history of local architecture and sports. She's a philanthropist, an activist, a published author. She's just a boss. Helen Edwards, welcome to My CHEK.
Oh, I'm pleased to be here.
You know what? I was thinking you've probably been in this podcast studio more than I have with chamber chats and different things.
Exactly, but that's okay.
Now
it's a new experience.
Yeah, she's like, fine, I'll do it, Paul. But thank you. I appreciate you doing it. I want to start at the beginning because you, as I mentioned, born and raised in Victoria. When did you start falling in love with sports?
Well, my dad was a big baseball fan. He took me to my first game when I was 3 years old.
Wow.
At Old Royal Athletic Park when it was still old green wood. And I went to my first hockey game at 5 because the Victoria Cougars ticket office was right next to radio station CJVI that had a kids club. And we used to walk down there. And we were just 4 and 5 years old, but it was safe to walk in those days. And they'd give us hockey tickets. And so I started going. Not a lot, not as much as now, obviously, but enough so that I remember some of the names. So,
wow. Yeah, and I mean, you turned it into quite a history, and the history of professional hockey, Victoria. We're going to get to this. One of 6 books you've written. You're working on 7. I know that.
Yeah.
But do you remember going to those games, or do you just remember that you went?
Well, for the baseball, according to my dad, I wasn't interested in the game. I just wanted whatever they were selling for snacks, which is typical of a 3-year-old. But somehow it stuck because even when we didn't have baseball here, I went to softball, and just sports was just always part of my life. And because I was female, I was not allowed to play those sports. So I went and watched guys play.
Yeah. I mean, was that tough for you? Obviously, you had a love of these games.
How I got my baseball fix, we used to play pickup softball in vacant lots.
Wow.
And I think I've still got the bat we used.
a little wiffle ball, they call it, right?
Well, and we had, I hate to say it, we possibly had more fun than organized sports.
I bet.
Because we just went and did it.
And it's organic, and that's real.
Yeah.
But, I mean, oftentimes I'm sure you might have been the only girl or only woman out there.
Yeah, most of the time.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. I grew up in a man's world, so
you didn't care?
I didn't care. I just wanted to be there.
I love that.
It was fun.
Yeah. And something I do want to get to, because I mentioned you've done so much volunteer work. We're going to talk about that and activism. But was that volunteer work something that your parents sort of instilled in you?
Very much so. Even if they didn't have money, they would donate their time.
Wow.
And I remember, my mother used to coordinate charity collections when you'd go door to door. She'd send me out with an adult when I was about 8 or 9. And I just thought this is how everybody did it. I thought everybody was, volunteering their time. Later, I discovered that no, most people don't. But I did. That's the field I grew up in. As I got older, I donated my time, and then when I got some money, I donated money. So
yeah, well, and I do want to talk about that because you've definitely donated so much over the years. But let's go back, because I think that even as you say, your parents don't have money, but they're volunteering their time. That's being part of a community, and for a lot of people, the sports world, that is being part of the community. So when did you start falling in love with the history and wanting to tell those stories?
Oh, well, I've always been interested in history. But this particular book was born when the Salmon Kings were disbanded.
Yeah.
And Billy Schvetz, who had played for the Maple Leafs in the 60s, he died. And the two things just merged. And I was really annoyed that there were no more Salmon Kings because I loved those guys.
Me too.
And it was good hockey, despite what people say. And we stood, the last game, we were in the stands with tears running down our eyes. And there will never be pro hockey in Victoria. So I realized this, not being totally stupid. And I said, if I don't tell these stories, they'll be gone forever. So I went over to Vancouver to the BC Sports Hall of Fame, and Jason Beck was amazing. He helped me find all sorts of documents, and he believed that I could do it. He was the first person to believe I could actually do a book this size.
Yeah.
And
Because it's weighty, Helen. This thing's
well,
got some
and
weight.
I tell you, every fact is footnoted, and there's statistics that I compiled because in the early days, they didn't worry about stuff like that. And there's information on every one of the, I think it's 483 players who played in a professional game in Victoria.
Wow.
And it just all started by somebody believing I could do it. And I started researching, and it was microfilm.
Wow.
No digitized stuff in those days.
Wow.
So it was microfilm, very hard on the eyes, but I spent hours at the library. And then about halfway through the process, UVic digitized papers so you could go out there and actually download them onto a stick so you didn't have to print the stupid things off, because when you print that off, it's not the best. But I did find Reggie Abbott, who played for the Victoria Cougars in 1950-51 when they won the championship. And through a friend, I was able to interview him. And he told me amazing stuff about Lester Patrick. And I think the best thing was when he wanted them to understand a play, he'd put nickels for one team and dimes for the other. And then he'd move them around on the tabletop.
That's a lot of money in those days.
Well, yeah. And just little things like that I have never seen before. And I read a lot.
Yeah.
And just little things like that. And I was really touched when he had his son bring him to the centennial celebration so he could thank me again.
We just celebrated the
We did.
1925 centennial celebration of Victoria Cougars. Helen's decked out. She got the hat. She looks fantastic. Now, this is something that you were wearing on Hockey Night in Canada during Hockey Day in Canada here in Victoria. You're interviewed by Ron McLean, and Ron is one of your biggest fans. I think he brings you up once a week on Hockey Night in Canada.
I know.
Because he's a hockey historian.
Yes.
You're a hockey historian, but to get the kudos at the highest level, that must feel pretty cool, Helen.
It is. Walking onto that artificial ice and getting to talk with him. And we relaunched this book because before it had a horrible cover. And I have an amazing designer now, and he did a nice cover for me I can be proud of. But talking to Ron before, and he had gone through the original book, and he said, oh, page this story, page something, this story.
Wow.
And he can relate what happened 100 years ago to what's happening today. And he said, we're not going to script anything. We're just going to talk. And I'm thinking, this is going out to 8.2 million people.
How nervous were you at that time?
I
So
was
is this podcast, Helen, by the way. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, I'm used to doing media stuff, but
Yeah.
on the ice with Ron McLean, who I've watched forever and greatly admire, that was a little nerve-wracking. But once I got out there, it was fine. And got messages. Well, that's when I got the message from Arthur Griffiths from all over the world.
Wow.
People were watching this. And I thought, this is really cool. I have really arrived, because he called me a Canadian national treasure. And nobody had ever said that to me before. And I will have that in my heart forever, because he appreciated the work that had gone into this, because it was 7 years of research and writing.
Wow.
So,
Well, Ron has a way of saying what we're all thinking. So, again, Ron McLean hit it right on the money. You're certainly a national treasure. One name you just brought up, Arthur Griffiths, one of
Yes.
the former owners of the Vancouver Canucks. Helen was also a former owner of the Vancouver Canucks. We're going to talk about that on the other side. You're watching and listening to Mike Check. Hello and welcome back to Mike Check. We have the legendary Helen Edwards in the building today. What did Ron McLean call you again?
Canadian national treasure.
A Canadian national treasure, and that is so right. And I teased before the break, Helen, that you were once an owner of the Vancouver Canucks. Maybe tell us that story if you don't mind.
Okay, well, it goes back to the junior Cougars in Victoria, and I knew the coach, Doug Anderson, because he had played for the Cougars in the 50s. And I said to him, I'd like to be part of your team. And he said, well, go talk to the ownership. Well, when I talked to that bunch of men, they said they didn't want any girls involved. And I was no girl. I was in my 20s.
Wow.
So, okay, that door closed. But at the same time, Northwest Sports, owned by the Griffith family, was opening up the ownership of the Canucks to public shares. They don't care whether you're male, female, black, purple, or green. Money is money.
That's right.
To a stockbroker. So I bought a few shares, and I bought some more, and I bought some more. And then we fast forward to when Arthur wanted to bring the bring basketball to Vancouver.
He probably wanted to bring football. Knowing Arthur, he probably wanted to bring everything. But yes.
Yeah, he would bring it. He's an amazing guy.
Yes.
Anyhow, yes, he wanted to bring
Grizzlies,
yes, to Vancouver, and in order to satisfy the requirements of the NBA, he had to have a certain share of the ownership. So he bought out minority owners. And we did rather well. And when I finally got to meet him at a Canucks event years later, I thanked him, and I said, Arthur, you set me up for life. And he said, well, I'm glad somebody made some money off it. We've been friends ever since. But, I owned a minuscule little amount, but I can say I owned a hockey team, so...
Yeah, good for you. That's so cool. And something that, staying over in Vancouver, working with Canuck Place, that was something very close to your heart, but something you've been involved with, and I think over the years have raised more than $500,000 for.
Yeah.
So maybe talk about that side of it, Helen.
When they said they were going to set up a hospice, I said, well, I got to support that. It's hockey and it's kids.
Wow.
So evidently I donated before they even had a house. And my dad donated too, and didn't have much money in those days, but what we had, we donated. And then they got the house, and just everything blossomed from there. And now they're my number one charity. I support many, but they're my number one. And it's just so wonderful to talk to the parents that have been helped at the hospice. I love it when I go to one of their events and I can talk, and it must be devastating to them to lose their child at 8 weeks, which is one couple I talked with. As I just about lost a son, but he was in high school, and he had an allergic reaction to nuts and was really, really sick. But by the next morning, he was fine. Well, their kids don't get better. So wow. I'm so utterly grateful that I don't have anything like that happening in my life. And I admire the courage of these parents to talk out, because I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's just not the way I'm built. So I support them, anything they do.
Seeing that marriage between hockey, which so many people are passionate about, and something that a lot of people need to be passionate about because it's truly saving lives. It's amazing. And you've really kind of made that connection, not just in Vancouver, but here in Victoria. I know Hockey Day in Canada was a big reason for that happening, was Helen Edwards. The century celebration, a big reason for that happening, Helen Edwards. But there's always a charity component, and that's important to you. So is that something that you've really melded those two worlds together, Helen? You must be very proud of that.
I am. I am proud that I now have sufficient funds to make meaningful donations, and I restrict how many people I donate to so that I can give larger donations. Because the problem is, once you make a big donation, every charity reads your name, and sends you messages. I can't support everybody. I'm sorry, but I do the best I can.
Wow. You know, Helen, it just your passion for sports and telling about, being a young girl who was kind of left on the sidelines but still found a way,
Yeah.
and a young woman who wanted
Yeah.
to be involved but still found a way. And
Yeah.
your story, it's really powerful in that sense. Do you ever kind of look back and say, wow, I did all this despite the fact all the barriers that were put up in front of
Yeah.
me?
Yeah. It's nice to look back and, you know, realize that things have changed. And they talk about a glass ceiling. I didn't break it. I smashed it.
I love that.
I mean,
Helen.
and when I worked in the heritage field, it was largely male dominated in those days, not so much now. So I've always sort of been in a male dominated world. And I am now an equal, which is really cool. 'Cause,
Yeah,
you know,
you're more than an equal in my eyes. You're blazing the dang trail, Helen.
I mean, people come and ask me questions now. I have now become the expert. So,
Well, you are the expert.
uh, yeah, it's been a long road, but yeah, now I can look back and say, yeah, I'm pleased with what I did, and I didn't call myself feminist or anything else. I was just stubborn, and I got what I wanted eventually.
You're very impressive. And I know you're working on another book right now, which is sort of the story of your life. And I
Yeah.
can't wait to have you back on the podcast because you're just going to be a regular guest now, Helen. I hope that you're okay with that. I'm interested. What inspires you now, Helen? Because I'm sure that it was all these different things over the years, but now, what inspires Helen Edwards?
I want to, number one, educate people about history because everybody should know where they came from. I also want to tell my story to inspire particularly young women that if they want something, go for it. Don't take no for an answer because I didn't take no for an answer.
You're damn right you didn't.
And I was not always popular, but that's fine. I don't care about popularity. I want to do the right thing, and I think I have, and I've proven it, for all the decades I've lived.
You know what, Helen? I think young girls can listen to that, but also not just young girls. I want to be Helen Edwards when I grow up, all right?
That's what most of my friends say.
More with the legendary Helen Edwards. A quick shift on the other side. You're watching and listening to My Check. Hello, welcome back to Mike Check. We have the one and only Helen Edwards, or as my best Alberta, Helen Edwards. No, it didn't work. Helen, we do a final segment. It's called a quick shift. You cool with that?
Okay.
All right, quick shift. We start with first car.
It was a Sunbeam Imperial.
Oh, a beauty, I bet, Helen.
It was horrible. It's all I could afford.
Favorite sport to watch growing up? That's a tough one because I know you're very baseball, you're very hockey.
It has to be baseball.
That's fair.
Come on.
There's nothing like going to a ball game, right? Everything, the sights, the smell, the sounds, summertime. Okay, favorite all-time athlete from Victoria?
Oh, my Lord.
These are the hard-hitting questions I got to ask you, Helen.
I have a list this long. I'm going to say Nick Pavetta
Wow, I love that.
because he
recent?
was one of our Harbor Cats, and he was the first to go to the majors. And
I love that. I love that. Nick Pavetta is a great answer. Okay, I know you love architecture and heritage houses. Favorite building or house around Victoria?
okay, there's a little house on Fort Street that I put on one of my books. It's been there since 1893, and I walked by it thousands of times, never noticed it.
Really?
Yeah, and it's just a cute little house, and it's beautifully maintained, and it's just a survivor. And how it survived the teardown of the 70s, I don't know, but it did.
Love that.
I mean, some people worship mansions. I like the houses of the little people.
Good for you. Okay, best logo for a sports team in Victoria? Salmon Kings is pretty unique.
Yeah.
I love the Victoria Cougars. You're rocking right here.
Yeah.
But we've had some good ones over the years.
Jeez, that's a hard one. You know something? I'm going to say the Victoria Salsa.
I love it. See, that was going to be my answer, Helen.
Because it was so crazy.
I played, albeit a couple games, for the Victoria Salsa, and I love that jersey. It's my favorite. Coolest person you got to interview for a book or research?
Oh, so many. Okay, back to baseball. I'm going to say Andrew Vaughn.
Yeah.
With the Chicago White Sox, because I got to interview him in the Chicago White Sox dugout in Seattle.
Wow, that is very cool.
And as I walked off the field, everybody's going, "Who's she? Who's she?" Which happens a lot when I walk into rooms, but that was a highlight.
Who's she? I love that. Movie about your life. Who's playing Helen Edwards?
Let's go with Helen Mirren.
What a great answer.
Because she's not afraid to go old.
And Helens unite. I love that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well.
Yeah.
Best advice you've ever received?
Just go for it.
I love that.
Yeah, that was a woman that I admired greatly in the heritage field. And she said, you're going to run into a lot of opposition. You're going to run into men who say you don't know anything. She said, just go for it. So I have.
Well, we're all benefits of the fact that you just went for it. Finally, where can people get your stuff, Helen?
Okay, all the books are available at local bookstores and also at Craigie Castle. And if you want, you can go to my website, helenedwards.ca, and all the details are there.
And just support local, right? Support
You bet.
Local bookstores, support local authors, support the legendary Helen Edwards. Helen, thank you so much. You did not disappoint because I've been trying to have you on the show for years now. But thank you for coming on, and just thank you for what you've done to keep history alive in this city.
Well, somebody's got to do it, and I figure it's me.
Yeah, just do it, right?
Just
take that,
do it.
Nike. Helen had it first.
Yeah.
That does it for another episode of Mike Check. Of course, you can listen anytime on the CHEK Plus app. Until we chat again.